Good morning, everyone, and thanks for joining us today. We have a lot of folks still logging in to the GoToWebinar platform, so we'll give them one moment, but welcome. Good morning again, everyone. My name is Stacy Isaac Barraza with IB Environmental, and we are here to help facilitate this WaterFirst webinar that's being put on by GFA this morning. So glad that you could join us to learn more about the WaterFirst program. And on the next slide, you'll see a little bit more information about logistics. So if we move on here, I think we're all fairly familiar with the GoToWebinar platform by now, but here is a screenshot of what your control panel should look like. And you'll see on there that there are a couple of handouts. So you should have in your control panel 2 handouts. One is the bio for the speaker. This morning we have Laurie Loftin from Athens-Clarke County who's going to be our speaker. And then another handout includes all of the slides for today's webinar. We also want to encourage you to participate as much as possible in the webinar. We know that there are limitations to this online or virtual platform, but there are ways to interact. So if we want to ask you a question on the fly, we will ask that you raise hands. So you will see the lowest little icon there is the raise hand feature. So I'll test that out right now. Make sure that everyone is hearing okay and that you're not having technical difficulties. If you're not having technical difficulties, please go ahead and use that raise hand feature so we know that things are working okay. All right, when we see those hands going up. Thanks very much, y'all. We also will be having a few polls throughout Laurie's presentation, so be sure to look out for those and respond to them in a timely manner when they do pop up. And at the very end, we will have an evaluation, a quick survey, just a few questions on how this went today and ask you to give us some frank feedback on that. There are a couple more webinars in this series, and so we'd love your feedback so we can tweak those if at all possible. And then last but not least, definitely want you to use this opportunity to ask questions. So Laurie will be talking about water conservation today mainly, but please go ahead and put your questions to Laurie in the questions box that you see on your screen. So with that, I think we will move on. I'm going to give a quick run through on the WaterFirst program, and you'll see here some information that was actually presented in the first webinar back in April of this series. So we had the webinar back in April, then we took a break, then we have this one today, we have one next Monday, and then one the following Wednesday. So we will drop into the chat here a link where if you missed the first webinar back in April, you will be able to listen to a recording of that and go into some of this information in more detail. So basically, the WaterFirst program is run by GFA, and it looks at communities going above and beyond state regulations in terms of things like water conservation. It includes drinking water, wastewater, and stormwater. And a plug for the webinar next Monday, it will be from the Georgia EPD folks, the Environmental Protection Division in Georgia, talking about the basic minimum requirements in terms of water conservation that you have to meet. And so WaterFirst, again, is meant to go above and beyond that. So the next slide, please. Okay, this is a little bit of information on the application process for the WaterFirst program. There's a checklist that you can use to sort of manage the process. And you can find all of this on GFA's WaterFirst webpage, which we'll share as well. So the next slide. All right, so a little bit about the application process. Besides doing the paperwork and filling out information, there is an on-site review. And so this is a picture from one of those reviews where GFA staff and other evaluators will come out to your community and sort of walk the plant, and you get to have some input on, you know, which parts of the plant or which processes they see, but that's part of the process as well, that on-site review. The next slide just gives you an overall sort of flow chart of what is involved, right? So there are many components of the WaterFirst program. So it's not a 5-minute application process, to be honest, but there are a lot of advantages to being a WaterFirst designated community. So the next slide shows some of these benefits. Probably the most famous one is that 1% interest rate reduction for GFA water-related loans. So the interest rates for loans at GFA are relatively low right now compared to other financing sources, but you get a whole 1% reduction on that interest rate that's already low if you have this designation. But there are other benefits as well. There's statewide recognition. You'll see a big sign entering, you know, a WaterFirst designated community. So that signage is a hallmark of the program. Then you have access to other networking opportunities and workshops being part of this WaterFirst program. So something to consider. We hope that folks on here today, if you have any questions about the process, etc., please reach out with questions either during the webinar today, and someone will follow up with you after, or we'll give you some information at the end of the webinar too, where you can reach the staff at GFA in the Water Resources Division to get some more information on this. So, all right, on the next slide, this is some of the signage that we were talking about before, right? So this is an actual WaterFirst designation sort of ceremony where the signs are presented and later they'll be put up. Next slide, please. Okay, so I will just like to really briefly introduce our speaker this morning. So Laurie Loftin is the Water Conservation Coordinator at Athens-Clarke County Public Utilities Department. She frequently listens to and highly recommends a podcast called Water in Real Life. The hosts routinely ask guests if they choose water or if they choose, or if water chose them, right? So that's a good question for the water industry in general. A lot of us didn't necessarily choose to be in the water field, but water sort of chose us. With a background in child and family development / early childhood education, it is fair to say water chose Laurie. She has been a water professional for 10.5 years now, and the job has forever changed her. So we welcome Laurie, and we can see you. We can see your slides, Laurie. It looks great. Take it away, and we will queue up the questions here. So folks, don't forget to put your questions in the question blocks. Thanks, Laurie.
Thank you, Stacy. I want to thank everybody for joining us today. As you heard in the introduction, my name is Laurie Loftin, and my background is a little bit odd, possibly for a water utility, but in truth, my background has been beneficial. When I interviewed my boss, future boss told me that she could teach me about water conservation, but I couldn't teach or make her want to be in a classroom. I've since learned a lot about what it takes behind the scenes to make water delivery happen, and started developing our water education program, and along the way discovered a passion for water I did not know was possible. This led me to become more involved with the Georgia Association of Water Professionals, where I was one day asked to step in as chair for the Georgia WaterWise Council. This is a section of GAWP. WaterWise is open to all GAWP individual members, and it consists of people from the water industry, the Georgia green industry, and NGOs. It was formed in response to drought and as a way to bring various stakeholders together to the table as legislation was being created that impacted all involved. If you are not a member, I encourage you to join GAWP as an individual member and then join us with the WaterWise Council. We are currently planning a specialty conference for next fall that will cover the basics for creating a water conservation plan, and it's something to be on the lookout for. So why a presentation on water conservation and efficiency measures for your community? We may not be experiencing drought as they are currently experiencing in the West, but we all know that the Southeast is not immune to drought. This picture shows our Bear Creek Reservoir, which is the only source of water in Athens when we can no longer pull from the rivers, and we share it with 3 other counties. This image is from the 2007-2008 drought. At this time, we got down to anywhere from a 30 to 60-day supply of water, depending on who you ask. And you probably have experienced something similar to this. But the image, it just is a reminder of how important wise water use is to our community, and we really need to take action before the supply disappears. And you've got to be thinking about who's going to keep your reservoirs full. How are you going to do that? Having a plan and someone dedicated to water savings today can ensure that your reservoirs don't disappear tomorrow, which brings us to our first poll question. Do you have a staff person who is dedicated to water conservation? Yes, no, don't know. And that no being, is there somebody who just takes it all on? That is do you all just pass it around to different people, or do you have somebody whose job specifically is to focus on water conservation?
Awesome. And Laurie, we have responses rolling in. So everyone, you should see the poll on your screen. Just to reiterate, the question is, does your utility have a staff person designated to water conservation? And you will just click the radio button for yes, no, or do not know and hit submit. All right. And we are going to go ahead and close this poll in 3, 2, 1. All right, and it looks like 35% said yes, 57% said no, and 9% are unsure.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Well, I hope that with this presentation that you might start thinking about having somebody who's dedicated to it, because it is worthy of having that kind of commitment. Today, I plan to give a very basic overview of water conservation and efficiency. It includes defining these terms, spotlighting on why wise water use is beneficial. We're going to compare long-term conservation versus short-term drought. We'll address demand hardening. I'm going to touch on gallons per capita per day. I'm going to briefly mention the 10 steps to planning a successful conservation program, share ideas to go above and beyond, and also provide resources to help you with planning. So you might be thinking, why go over the basics? Well, I understand there are some people who have recently started or considering focusing on conservation at their utility. Some may be contemplating adding a specific conservation person. Maybe you're like me and you sometimes enjoy a refresher and looking for some inspiration. Or you maybe have someone in your utility who questions the need to implement much conservation, which I know sounds funny, but when you think about it, water utilities are a business, and businesses are in the business of generating revenue. Conservation actively works to reduce your sales. I doubt you're going to find the equivalent position within Coca-Cola or Home Depot who are telling people to buy less of their product. But water is different, and by selling less water, we save over the long term, which hopefully that comes across throughout this presentation. So what is conservation and efficiency? The definition of conservation has changed over the years. In the 1930s, most would have said it involved building a reservoir to capture runoff that would otherwise be lost by flowing into an unusable body of water, such as the ocean. In the free-loving 70s, water professionals became aware that minimizing water waste was essential, and American Water Works Association updated their statement to describe it as using every effective means to prevent and minimize water waste and promote wise use. Another definition that's frequently put out there is simply that conservation is restricting or curtailing use of water during a drought. Georgia has their own definition of conservation, as shown here. It's the beneficial reduction of water use, water waste, and water lost. It is something that's implemented as a long-term water management practice with the ultimate goal of maximizing the benefit of each gallon used while not preventing water use. To further complicate the definition of conservation, oftentimes water conservation and water efficiency are used interchangeably, but are they the same thing? A common perception is that water conservation means that you're restricting customer use as a temporary response to drought. But today, while water use restrictions are still useful for short-time drought management, many of these standard water use restrictions have been made permanent. For example, we limit the hours you can water outside, which was once considered to be a conservation method reserved for drought. But the Georgia Water Stewardship Act prohibits watering between 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. So this once conservation measure is now permanent, whether we're in drought or not. Amy Vickers, who is the author of the Handbook of Water Use and Conservation, which is a guide that many refer to as the Bible of water conservation. She, excuse me, defines conservation as a beneficial reduction or elimination of water loss or use, which implies using less or no water. So same definition as Georgia. Efficiency is the minimization of the amount of water used to accomplish a function, task, or result. This implies better use of water applied, but not necessarily using less water. Vickers offers an example of the difference. Some might say a true conservation landscape would not have any additional watering needs outside of rainfall. On the other hand, the efficient landscape will incorporate drip irrigation or a smart irrigation system. So the amount of water used is reduced while you're still accomplishing the task. So it is elimination versus minimization. And conservation, that can result in elimination or minimization, while efficiency is only minimization. But all this being said, I, like most, will use these terms interchangeably throughout the presentation, but I did want to differentiate between the two. We're going to take another quick poll. I know we have varying degrees of conservation knowledge, and speaking for myself, my confidence in my level of knowledge fluctuates. But where would you rate yourself regarding your knowledge of conservation and efficiency?
Great, and everyone, you should again see the poll up in front of your screen. Go ahead and select the answer that best describes your level of knowledge. I'm a newbie, I have some basic knowledge, I have some solid background, or I'm an expert. Great, and I appreciate everyone getting those answers in. We will go ahead and close that poll in 3, 2, 1. All right, Laurie, it looks like 40% has some basic knowledge, 30% has some solid background, and 23%, I'm a newbie. There's a small percentage of experts, about 7.
Okay. Well, thank you. I hope that there's something for everybody in this presentation today, and we'll move on through. So why conservation and efficiency? While Georgia's freshwater supplies, as we all know, are finite and increasingly limited, we continue to stretch our existing supply. As our population continues to grow along with development, we are often encouraging this more development, which again puts increased demand on our supply. Lowering water production and distribution costs reduces our operating costs, so that's helpful, as well as the costs that are incurred on the collection side of our systems. One of the advantages to conservation and how it can save a utility money over a long-term vision is that. So again, back to that Home Depot and Coca-Cola conversation. Poor water quality threatens the usefulness of many water supplies and compromises our resources. Conservation is often referred to as a hidden reservoir. By reducing water demand, you put less wear and tear on that infrastructure, and you can delay the need to build new water supplies. And if you are somewhere where you might be considering building a dam or reservoir, you can avoid or delay the possible controversy that often accompanies such projects. Fish, wildlife, and aquatic species require clean water and sufficient flows, and that can affect what is allowed for you to pull per your withdrawal permit. And it can assist you with meeting regulatory requirements. And just speaking of your drinking water withdrawal permit, you are required to submit a conservation plan along with it, and that is a big focus of the Georgia Water Stewardship Act of 2010, water conservation. So we'll take a quick look at that. This act calls on water systems to improve the efficiency and effectiveness of water use and to establish administrative programs and procedures to encourage water conservation to enhance our state's water supply. Many of these components that are in the Georgia Water Stewardship Act are key to our water efficiency today and are a foundation of everybody's conservation programs. If you are newer to water conservation, many of the components of this act are probably something that you take for granted as best management practices today. For example, if we look at our outdoor watering restrictions today, that is because of this act. Local governments have to adopt or amend their ordinances to restrict their outdoor irrigation using publicly supplied water to the hours between 4 p.m. and 10 a.m. And it requires the use of an automatic cutoff spray nozzle, and as well as encouraging drip or soaker hose irrigation. This is the non-drought watering schedule that's used by all utilities. I love this because it provides consistency from one county to the next. So if I'm telling my residents you can only use water between these hours, so is Oconee County, so is Madison County, so is Jackson County. So it's consistent there during non-drought times. The act also called for an amendment to our state plumbing code and requires high efficiency toilets, water-based urinals, shower heads, bathroom and kitchen faucet aerators that are being installed anytime after 2012. They have to be high efficiency. So now again, with our toilets at the hardware store, 1.28 gallons per flush is the maximum that you can have. That is based on what the Georgia Water Stewardship Act has put in place for us. Submetering, this is big. Property owners traditionally measured water use in many multi-unit buildings, such as apartments or office buildings, using a centralized meter for the entire building. The use and total costs were then divided among the building tenants using an allocation formula. By contrast, the submetering provides a system in which water use in each unit is directly measured and each tenant is billed for their use. This provides greater awareness of personal water use and an incentive to reduce water loss. I can't say enough how much I love that, because if you don't know how much water you're using, how do you know to use less? And if you see a neighbor who's using what appears to you to be a lot, you might be thinking, well, I'll use more water too. So it's a great incentive. Water loss audits, love them or hate them. The Water Stewardship Act requires water systems serving over 3,000 to conduct an annual audit to look for system-wide leaks. The utility sets a good example for the residents by doing this. We ask our customers to find and fix leaks, so this makes us have to do the same. And this provision of the water loss audit is something that has helped to establish Georgia as a leader in water conservation. Not every state has that requirement, but it has put us as a leader. And conservation pricing, though it is not specifically required through the Act, it does recommend utilities provide incentives for residential and commercial water conservation pricing by systems. And this could include block pricing or tiered billing. And of course, another reason for why water conservation and efficiency is drought. It happens. You can turn to the U.S. Drought Monitor to see all of these colorful maps of past droughts throughout the state, the dark red color representing the most severe drought. In 2019, we had what was called a flash drought, which for me was the first time I heard the term. I'm always learning new items, new things in water. In case this term is new for you too, we'll take a quick look at flash drought. In its simplest form, it is the rapid onset of drought. In contrast with conventional drought, which is mainly driven by a lack of precipitation, flash drought usually includes abnormally high temperature, winds, radiation, and all of this leads to abnormally high evapotranspiration rates. Researchers studying flash droughts found that soil moisture, which is an indicator of conventional drought declarations, was plentiful prior to the flash drought, but rapidly evaporated due to the heat, wind, and radiation. Unlike a conventional drought, which can occur year-round and everywhere in the United States, flash drought does have a preferred season and locations to occur, which is mostly the warm season and over central United States, although, again, we do experience it. It's also correlated with La Nina episodes. Contradicting the common perception that flash droughts are rare events, they occur frequently, but often go unnoticed. Now, when we think about drought, it is important that we understand the difference between long-term conservation and short-term drought response. This chart here is pulled from Consideration for Drought Planning in a Changing World, and it is available free of charge from the Alliance for Water Efficiency, if you would like to download this guide. When we talk about a conservation plan, we are discussing establishing long-term permanent water demand reductions with an emphasis on having a comprehensive plan. Once these measures are installed, they stay in place. The purpose of long-term conservation is to build drought resilience. It will permanently reduce the baseline and peak demands. You maintain higher water storage levels in your reservoir aquifer, and you have a slower drawdown. So when drought hits, you have this little buffer to ride out the drought longer. A benefit is you can sometimes delay or avoid the need for drought restrictions while still living within your supply constraints. Long-term demand reductions are often achieved via increases in efficiency and represent water supply strategies that maximize utilization of existing resources. They're designed to reduce the demand for water, improve efficiency in use, and reduce losses of waste of water, and they improve land management practices to use water more efficiently. In contrast, when you're looking at a drought, you need immediate action to be taken to reduce that demand for water. This action is often referred to as a short-term curtailment because it's implemented on just a temporary basis. You must react very quickly to implement drought mitigation strategies to curtail a shortage in your supply, which is typically composed of water use restrictions and behavioral measures such as shutting off fountains, outdoor water reductions, eliminating car washes, or requiring pool covers. Drought response options can build on your long-term conservation plan. And of course, planning for drought in advance is essential. Contingency planning before a shortage allows selection of appropriate responses consistent with the various levels of severity. In Georgia, we received direction from the EPD regarding the issuance of drought response. And EPD, again, they provide us with increasingly restrictive actions for progressive stages of drought. You just have to be prepared for what you would do in response to a drought if you're requiring or requesting a variance and that is approved. But important to remember that public outreach and education are critical components of this process. Now, the talk of long-term conservation development to permanently reduce the baseline and peak demand raises understandable questions and concerns. So there is a worry that if your utility has implemented this aggressive conservation program, then you've limited your ability to reduce demand during a drought water emergency. How do you go further? The Alliance for Water Efficiency, again, they took a look at demand hardening theory, and they applied a comprehensive and rigorous examination of several water suppliers who have invested significantly in water use efficiency over many years. Discussions about demand hardening and the impact of rising water use efficiency can often be conflated with ability and willingness of customers to make time-limited adjustments in behavior when required. They also often fail to appreciate that not all water use efficiency programs are equal in terms of their implications for demand hardening, nor is demand hardening independent of saved water's fate. This study included surveying water customers to gain understanding of their willingness and attitudes toward being asked to cut back during times of water shortages. Respondents indicated there is a willingness to do their part to save. The conclusion of the report did not find demand hardening theory to be proven or realized in practice. In fact, Amy Vickers, again, who wrote the Bible of water conservation, she goes so far as to call demand hardening a myth. Discretionary demands can be curtailed immediately if necessary during droughts and emergencies. And as water efficiency continues to evolve, new measures and savings will also proceed. So you can't let fears of demand hardening keep you from implementing a strong conservation program. And if you're interested in looking at this guide any further, it is available also for free for download on the AWE website. Now I'm going to ask a question just to satisfy my curiosity and make sure y'all are still paying attention. Are you wearing your jammies right now? I know many of you have returned to the workplace, so you may not have to change out of your PJs to go to work. So, quick question for you.
All right, Laurie, those answers are rolling in. We have about 60% of people answering thus far. Just to reiterate, are you wearing your pajamas right now? Options are no, 100% yes, business on top, PJs on bottom, and I've changed out of them right before this webinar. So we are going to go ahead and close this poll in 3, 2, 1. And Lori, about 93% said no, where 3%, 100% yes, and the other 3%, business on top, PJs on bottom.
Thank you. Full disclosure, number 3 would be my answer too. People at work are wondering about me, but they always do. So in looking at customer water demands, the most commonly cited water metric is gallons per capita per day, the GPCD. This is typically an average for all water users in a given area, and it is useful on the surface. However, when you hear this number, know that if you're using this number to compare one water system to another, that you're not always going to be comparing apples to apples. The GPCD can be done it's typically done differently, so it can be misleading. A system-wide GPCD is figured by taking the volume of metered water divided by total residential population served divided by 365 days. Like I said, it seems simple, but not all volumes of water are the same. One utility may include all water, which includes their water losses and their leaks. And another may be using water consumption only from single or multifamily residences to arrive at their number. Others still could be using gallons per customer account, or gallons per square foot, or gallons per employee. So there are many ways to arrive at your number of GPCD. If you do have the ability to separate your meters to collect your water data, it is recommended to use the single family residence GPCD. That's the most valuable. Multifamily can sometimes include commercial, and you don't always know the population there. So that's why, again, they suggest single family residence. As an example, I'm sharing with you our GPCD for Athens. We use that common metric, so this does include all of our water use, including any water losses, commercial, industrial, single family, and multifamily. It provides a general idea of our overall water use and highlights areas we might want to investigate to see more of what happened. For example, looking at our GPCD, you can see that we've had water drop of over 50 gallons since 2005, and we had a big drop around 2007. What's going on there? That drought of 2007, 2008 took place, and we entered into a level 4 drought response, which included a total ban on outdoor water use. Also importantly, we introduced a tiered billing rate structure shortly after that drought, and all combined, it did lead to a dramatic drop in water demand. So you can see here conservation at work. We had another drought in 2012 and 2016 where there were drops. It's also important, I don't have it highlighted on here, but in 2009, there's another drop, and we had a chicken processing plant close. That was a big industry here. About that same time in 2010, 2011, our water conservation education and outreach program expanded and has continued to grow. So you can see how those elements also help to improve or lower our water demand. Another view of this data adds the population growth to the chart. Many utilities across the nation, probably yours too, have seen similar declines in water demand while your population increases. As I mentioned earlier, conservation is often referred to as a hidden reservoir, and I'm confident that had our demand continued to grow from 2005 along with the population, we would have needed to find and invest in another water supply to meet today's growth. So conservation paid off by delaying capital cost. You don't see it in quite the same way as generating revenues, but that hidden cost has been saved. We're going to do one more quick poll before we move on to this next part, because we're going to be looking at end user study. But first, curious, with the additions of high efficiency products, where do you think most water use takes place in a single family residence?
Awesome. So that poll is up on everyone's screen, and your options are the shower, toilet, dishwasher, washing machine, or the faucet. So go ahead and submit those answers. And we will just give it a few more seconds. Answers are still rolling in. All right, then I'll go ahead and close that poll in 3, 2, 1. All righty. So on the screen here, we have 39% said shower and 32% said toilet. The remaining goes to washing machine at 14%, faucet at 11%, and then dishwasher at 4%.
Okay. Well, if you answered toilet, you are correct. Where does all of the water that's being used go? A 1999 study examined end water uses, and a follow-up study was conducted in 2016 so that it would reflect the addition of the higher water efficiency products. They randomly selected about 1,000 single-family residential accounts from 23 study cities, one of which was Georgia's own Clayton County. Yay, Clayton. Billing records showed average annual per household use ranged from 44,000 gallons to 175,000 gallons per home per year, with this wide range of use being influenced by climate and weather patterns, because we're looking at southeast mid-country, the West Coast. So while it's tempting to compare this annual use from the 1999 study to the 2016, it's inappropriate to do so, just because these participating utilities differed between the two studies. The first was comprised, like I was saying, mostly of the western and southwestern utilities, which could allow for extreme variation in climate and weather, and therefore it can be supposed that these households would vary greatly in their outdoor water use if you compared the utilities across the entire North America. Instead, the researchers thought it would be more useful and appropriate to compare indoor water use between the two studies to account for the potential outdoor watering disparities. And not surprisingly, residential indoor water use in single-family homes has decreased. The average per household daily water use has decreased 22%, from 177 gallons per household per day to 138. And then the per capita average water use has decreased 15%, from 69.3 to 58.6. The study also looked at where exactly the water use takes place in these single-family residences. You can see the largest indoor water use in the single-family home was contributed to toilet flushing, followed by faucets, showers, clothes washers, leaks, bathtubs, and then other, which included things such as evaporative cooling, humidification, water softening, and then you've got dishwashers. So these high efficiency products, even with that, this is what we're down to. The study also created a landscape group, which was comprised of a representative subset of these participating utilities. Local weather conditions, irrigated area, water cost, and the type of plant material were major drivers for outdoor use. And the outdoor water use category is comprised of water use like landscape irrigation, water use through hose bibs, water for filling and backwashing swimming pools, washing pavement in cars, and so forth. I think the important takeaway from these two views is that we see outdoor watering, if that's factored in, that they found that uses the majority of our water, even more so than this toilets. Since we are in a hot and typically dry state, when you're putting together your conservation plan, outdoor water use conservation measures should be something considered for emphasis within that long-term plan. Now, knowing what conservation efficiency are, why it's important, understanding demand hardening theory has been found to remain just that, it's just a theory. Knowing about GPCD and typical end uses of water, we can start to look at developing a water conservation plan. There are several well-respected guides out there to help utilities with their planning, but they all pretty much seem to contain something similar to these 10 components shown on the screen. They're very, very similar. And I wish we had more time to go through all of these points in depth, but that would require a good long portion of time. And as I mentioned earlier, the Georgia Waterwise Council is in the planning stages of a GAWP specialty conference for next November or December. It'll be about 5 or 6 hours long, which will allow us to go in deeper to each of these components, which is about the time that you really need. So that's why we can't go through that today. But some of those resources that I'm referring then, you can look at these. There is the AWWA guide, the M52 guide, which was updated in 2018. You can use things from the M60 Drought Preparedness and Response Manual, again from AWWA. It identifies 7 crucial steps for drought preparedness and response, including how to go about forming a water shortage response team and establishing trigger levels to request a variance. I've got the G480-20 on here. This is a voluntary standard that can be adopted by water providers at their own discretion, and it was recently updated. The G480 describes the critical elements of an effective water conservation and efficiency program. The standard encompasses activities undertaken by a utility within its own operations to improve water use on the supply side, upstream of customer meters through the distribution system management, and on the demand side through customer billing and education practices. A conservation program that's meeting this standard has the potential to impact all water users. And if you are a member of Alliance for Water Efficiency, I keep giving pushes for other organizations, if you are a member of that, they will review and verify submissions for the G480 status for current members free of charge. And members can also earn a standing on their leaderboard, which is great for anyone with a competitive streak. Georgia's own Cobb County is on that leaderboard. As I mentioned earlier, Amy Vickers' book, The Water Use and Conservation Handbook, which covers writing a plan. The Maddow's Guide is helpful, and there's another guidance document from Vickers entitled A Guide to Customer Water Use Indicators for Conservation and Financial Planning. I think those are both available online for free also. And then if you're a member of GAWP, you can get the Georgia Operator Magazine. Our summer issue had a feature on smart irrigation controllers, and we have another magazine that will be coming out that will have an article about flash drought, and that is distributed to anybody who's a GAWP member. There is a tracking tool available, one from AWE. There's also one that WaterSense has that can evaluate water savings, costs, and benefits of conservation programs for a specific water utility. There is the WaterSmart Conference. This is a conference held every October in Las Vegas, and it is entirely focused on water conservation. I know that people might think, wow, you get to go to Vegas. This is one, if you're going to send somebody who's going to be focusing on water conservation to a conference, this is one to go to. It's just great networking, a lot of people to meet there. And then, of course, looking at that U.S. Drought Monitor is also very helpful looking for Georgia. I've briefly touched on all of these organizations at some point today, the Alliance for Water Efficiency, Georgia Association of Water Professionals, our WaterWise Council, but I haven't really looked at WaterSense. So last poll here, before we go any further, I do have a question. Are you a WaterSense partner?
All right, guys, that last poll is up on your screen. Your answer choices are yes, no, or you plan to be a partner by the end of this week. So go ahead and get those answers submitted. You guys have been doing great getting these answers in fairly quickly. So go ahead and answer this last question here. And I will go ahead and close this poll in 3, 2, 1. All right, Laurie, 75% said no, but 21% said yes, and 4% plan to partner by the end of the week.
Great, thank you. I hope you do become a partner. I'm going to show you. They are a great resource for utilities, and they invite every utility to partner with them to promote water efficiency in the WaterSense logo. They are similar to the EPA's Energy Star, which most people are familiar with. WaterSense is the sister organization with a focus on water. They have a labeling program. You can see what that label looks like up in the corner of this slide, and it helps consumers identify high efficiency products. Any item with its WaterSense logo has been independently tested by a third party and has been found to be at least 20% more water efficient than the traditional counterpart, while still providing the performance our customers demand. We provide partners with so many free resources to better communicate with your customers, and they'll reach out to you for suggestions on what we would like for them to create, with the request for adding more materials for kids always being popular. So you can see some of these items on here. With the pandemic still keeping many kids out of school this spring, they created the kid-friendly tools to promote ways to save water at home for Earth Day with tips and activities. And I like that children don't typically have power to make big changes like installing a new water efficient dishwasher, but this handout gave some simple ideas for what kids could do at home.
And Laurie,
Sorry,
just a quick time check. We have about 14 minutes left. So,
okay, all right, thank you. They provide you with social media graphics. If you have to come up with content for social media, you know how time consuming that can be. They have it prepared and ready for you. They have bill inserts. They have little handouts that you can send to schools through kids. They have come up with something. They've hosted partner roundtables, and based on the feedback they received during these roundtable discussions, they developed a series of one-pagers for different audiences about drought. That includes restaurants and hotels, landscapers and garden professionals, residents, homeowners associations. So you would have these handouts ready to give. Each identifies ways to reduce water using terms during times of drought, and you can print and post them as these PDFs like they are, or you can customize them in PowerPoint to include your organization's logo, website, and contact information. They came up with 2 new guides, again, based on partner feedback. The Remote Possibilities Guide pulls together ideas, tips, and customizable tools and lessons learned through their partner roundtables. It's broken into 4 sections, and it includes customizable tools to make implementation easy. They talk about outreach and events, education, audits, or incentives during a pandemic. They also pulled together this new affordability and efficiency guide, which includes a number of case studies, lessons learned, sample partnership agreements, forums, and promotions. So all very helpful. I highly recommend you get with WaterSmart. It's free. You get so much, you will be amazed at what the partner website shares with you. Going beyond, we'll go through some of these real quickly here. Originally, Brian Schwartz was going to be talking to us today, but he had a conflict and was at the 74th Annual Southeastern Turfgrass Conference in Tifton today. No idea they had such a thing, but he's a researcher for the University of Georgia and studies turfgrass. Here, real quickly, he calls himself a grass dork. We Venn diagrammed him. He's really a deek or a gork. Point being, if you want to hear somebody talk about grass and you think grass conversation is going to be boring, if you see Brian Schwartz is talking, go hear him. So I discussed TIF turf and what makes it different from other grasses. Brian has been studying this grass, which has that has been found to keep moisture in the soil better, and it produces a grass that is greener and it uses less water. TIF uses 38% less water than TIFWay 419, which is the commonly used Bermuda grass. Again, it stayed green longer, 95% coverage. And you might be wondering, why am I mentioning a specific brand of grass as we discuss going beyond in your conservation efforts? I suggest that you encourage your municipalities to set a good example for your residents. You may be able to work with your landscape department to encourage the implementation or installation of this type of grass in places like a new amphitheater, as they did in Lexington, or if they're replacing grass at a softball field, a median, laying sod at a new building. You can suggest it be installed at golf courses. You set an example, they see your green grass, customers will ask you about it. And this turf grass, it is a little more expensive than the usual grass, but researchers did some studies and they found that the payback for a new lawn in the Southeast is around 3 to 4 years, and less than 2 years if you soon experience drought conditions after installing this grass. Something else you could do is create a program like this. We have something called H2 Grow that we do in Athens, and you can see the more details about this at our website, accgov.com/H2Grow. What this is it takes native drought-tolerant plants and gives this to our customers as far as what kind of plants they could put into their yard. Obviously, drought-tolerant plants are what we want to encourage our customers to plant, including taking out their sod to do this. And we had a intern who is a landscape architect student. She went through all of the native plants that were going to be available through the nurseries, and looking at that, she created 3 designs for us. One is for the shade and 2 are for the sunny areas. She pulled together about 8 species for each plant design, and she gave a layout for it in either an oval or rectangle shape. Included with this guide is also how to care for it in the every season of the year. And what I liked about this, I don't know about you, but if I'm going to plant something, I have no idea about plants. I don't have the time to research what to put in there that would be drought tolerant. So this guide helps our customers. We partnered with a local nursery. They provided a 20% discount for anybody purchasing a collection. And we also sent out a $10 off gift certificate or gift coupon that they could clip out in their newsletter and bring to the facility, to the nursery, to get their plants. Here is an example of what the Sunnyside selection looks like. Just give you an idea, we also incorporated milkweed, very popular plant. Talking about WaterSmart again, here they had WaterSense, they had something that you could pull off of their website for their Better Yard campaign. If you've attended any marketing sessions, you've probably heard the quote, when you speak to everyone, you speak to no one. In short, if you don't understand your audience, you don't understand their needs. And if you don't understand their needs, you can't meet them and provide the support they require. So what this Your Better Yard campaign does is it breaks down customers by their potential landscape style. It creates a persona. So if you've got a customer who has a dog, there is a dog digging dilemma yard landscape recommendation. Somebody who goes out of town a lot, the landscape lecture would be for them. And there are 8. They also added a 9th one based on feedback they received, which is creative curb appeal, to tackle those challenging to manage strips of landscape that lie between the street and sidewalk. Suggest that you hold a fall festival or a water festival. We do this. This is our annual flagship event. It's family friendly. We invite other water themed groups to come and partner with us. We just require that they bring a hands-on, brains-on, interactive activity game demonstration. What I like about this is that parents are looking for things to do with their kids. You provide them something that's educational, and you get the parents there too. Parents are not likely to come to your workshop on a Saturday morning to listen to you talk about leaks and how to fix things. You're not going to get as many parents as you could get at a water festival where they bring their children. And there, once you've got the kids, you've got them captivated with your activity, you've got parents who are standing, and so you can educate both the kids and the parents. We come up with a theme in Athens, where our last theme was the Water Olympics. Kids go through, they get a water log, and they have to complete 5 activities, whatever 5 they want, and then they can go to the water prize tent. And this year they received a medal, their gold medal, and a pennant, and got to stand on the boxes. One other thing we do too, the little girl up there in the corner, she is standing under the spray of our water truck. We do bring our vacuum and fill truck and spray the kids with water. I know it gets a little confusing because we're saying conservation, don't waste water. This could be seen as a waste of water, but we get requests that we need to have water at the water festival. Makes sense. So something else we do is a toilet flapper promotion. We do this every year in conjunction with the World Toilet Day, which is November 19th. This year, their theme is valuing toilets. We are doing a blue loo, and we pass out the dye tablets. We have partnered with a hardware store that will also give out the dye tablets. They can pick them up at our office or with them, and then the customer can get either a 2-inch or a 3-inch universal flapper for free. We just end up, the hardware store keeps track of how many they've sold. We come back at the end and pay them a check, credit card, for having passed these out. What I like about this is it takes the questions that customers might have about toilets away from me. I'm not an expert, and the hardware store can help them. Thinkatthesink.com, you can get more information there. We do an annual film contest, which we tie in with Fix a Leak Week, which is in March. Local pre-K through 12th grade submit films. We again partner with other organizations. We have a theme for what topics we want the films to be about. We use something called Film Freeway, which is a free way to get films submitted into this. It manages your films. A warning, if you do this, you will get films that are international films that are not anything to do with water. Just be aware that you will get things that you wouldn't expect. And then we host a blue carpet premiere where the kids are invited to dress up in their fanciest Oscar outfits and walk the blue carpet. This year, because of COVID, we ended up transitioning to a drive-in, and because it was going to be at night, we told everybody to dress in their fanciest PJs. I know we're running out of time here. There's something else we do, roll out the barrels. We have local artists paint rain barrels, and there are usually about 20 of them. We have a silent auction where people bid on them. This year we did online bidding, and we ended up raising the most money we've ever raised. All funds benefit our Athens Green School program, which is, again, partnership between us, our stormwater recycling, and gets us into the schools easily. One last slide here. We also do something called a Little Lily's Pad Hop project, which if you're interested in this, you can send me an email and I can give you some information about how we did this. This allows us to get into the schools with year-round water education. She is a travel buddy. She goes to the classroom and visits each individual household. The teacher will figure out if she's going to go home on the weekend, one day during the week, traveling in that backpack. The kids are required to write a journal entry, and they take Lily around and show her how they use water in their house. There's also books there that are water focused that the parents read with the kids. And this little journal entry right here, I liked it because the child had gotten a Johnny Cash CD for Christmas, and they said they had no idea that little Lily loved Johnny Cash. We send home a monthly Froggy Care package, which again, we're able to put in information for the parents as well as the kids, so that we're sending our message to not just the children, but the parents, and it allows us to reach about 700, 800 families every year. Some of these things on here is a Water for You and Me book that was free from Project Wet that we sent out there. We put in things about WaterSense, and over in the corner there, we send out Christmas ornaments, Valentine's cards, and a water cycle boogie game. And that is all I've got.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Laurie, for that good information. And we do have some questions here, so we just have a couple of minutes left. If we don't get to your question, we'll send you a written response afterwards. But thanks for the questions. Lots of good information. If you want to access some of the free resources that Laurie mentioned, be sure to download that handout. That handout has a lot of the links, etc. We had a lot of questions about where folks can register for the WaterFirst program, webinars that are coming up, and where they can learn more about the WaterFirst program. And so there's one main website or web page on the G4 website that we've put in there too. Laurie, one basic question is, what is a decent GPCD, or gallons per capita per day?
What I like to shoot for is what they found to be that number, the 59, about 59.60 per person. Now, again, our number doesn't show that because we are factoring in all water use, so we are higher. But I think that's a good goal to aim for.
And a little context around there. For affordability measures, they're looking at 50 gallons per person per day in some measures there. So. Also, a question here, this is kind of a big one. Our leadership is concerned about conservation pricing causing affordability issues for our low-income customers. Can you talk more about that, Laurie?
Yes, well, one thing I do recommend is going to WaterSense, becoming a WaterSense partner and looking at that affordability guide. It has good information in there about that. With that, you are going up in the cost as they use more. When we first put in ours in place, we came up with an allocation here, and our allocation now is an annual average. So figuring out that annual average, and that is where people would stay for their tier 1. As they go over that annual average, which is a minimum of the 50 gallons per person per day, so 3,000 a month. If they go over, they move into the next tier, and there's a formula for how they move through those tiers. Now, if you have a leak, that does come into, that's going to be costly. And the point being to motivate and incentivize people to get those leaks fixed quickly. We have an affordability program or bill of pay assistance through Project Share, which is part of the Salvation Army. So that can help people with that bill pay. Something else that we're looking into is getting a plumbers to people type of program in place, where if somebody has a leak, we have funds to help fix that leak. Because to me, even with the bill pay is great, but it's a Band-Aid as far as they're going to have a high bill the next month if they still have that leak going. So getting that fixed is key. We also do have AMI, And so now we are able to send leak alerts, which should hopefully inspire people when they get the leak alert, those that have signed up, then they will be finding it within 3 to 5 days or notification that they have a potential leak as opposed to waiting for their water bill. I don't know if that really answers the person's question, because I understand that concern that you are going to go up in bills, but I think having that allocation, some refer to this as having a lifeline, basic need amount of water that's in the lowest cost for the water.
Yeah, okay, good. And then one last question that we'll look at is submetering recommended or required per Georgia Stewardship Act?
It is required now for new multifamily being built. Prior to that, it is encouraged, but you do not have to go back and retrofit.
Right, so the buildings multifamily buildings that were built before 2010 are sort of grandfathered in.
Yeah, I think before 2012, I think is the year. Mm-hmm.
Okay, great. Okay, well, we are about out of time today. I think we got to most of the questions. We had sort of a lot of repeat questions, but if you move to the next slide here, yes, we want to reiterate that these upcoming WaterFirst webinars next Monday and then the following Wednesday, November 17th. These are the links to sign up. We also dropped that link in the question chat area for you. So we hope that y'all will take a minute here, just a minute or two at the end. Once we close off the webinar, it's going to pop up a quick evaluation for you. Please take a couple minutes to fill that out so we can use your feedback to prepare for the next 2 webinars. And there should be a link to the recording. We get this question too of today's webinar. Eventually, it will be on that same gfa.georgia.gov WaterFirst webpage is where that recording will be. But with that, I want to thank Laurie so much for your time today and for your excellent presentation with a lot of good resources and information. So thank you so much, Laurie. And I hope that everyone enjoys the rest of their day.
Thank you.